If you've ever tried to declutter and kept picking up the same item over and over, asking, should I keep this? You're not alone. In fact, it's probably the most common decluttering question there is, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a helpful question. I think this question makes decluttering much harder than it needs to be. So today, I want to show you why those 4 little words, should I keep this, can lead to guilt, fear, second guessing, and decision fatigue, and why letting go of that one question might be the most freeing thing you do when you declutter. At first glance, should I keep this sounds like a perfectly reasonable question. In fact, it's probably the question that most of us have been asking for years. I know I've asked it, and I hear my clients ask it all the time. So what's the problem? The problem isn't you. The problem is that we've been asking a question that sounds simple, but it really isn't. It sounds like a yes or no question, but it actually causes us to try to solve half a dozen different things all at once. Think about what happens the moment you pick up an item and ask, should I keep this? Your brain doesn't answer with a yes or a no. Instead, that one question turns into a whole conversation in your head. What if I need it someday? What if I regret getting rid of it? I spent good money on this. Someone gave it to me. Maybe one of my kids will want it someday. Maybe I'll finally use it when life settles down. And before you know it, you're no longer making just one decision. You're trying to make 6 or 7 different decisions all at the same time. No wonder decluttering feels exhausting. It's not because you're bad at making decisions, it's because the question that is supposed to help you make a decision is actually making that decision more complicated. So I think that's where we need to start, is with the question. Because good questions don't just give us better answers, they change the way we think. So let's look at the word should. It's such a small word, we hardly even notice it, but I think it has a much bigger impact than we realize. When you ask yourself, should I keep this? You're no longer simply making a decision about an object. You're trying to figure out what the right answer is, and that's important because the word should assumes that there is one. It assumes that there is a correct answer and an incorrect answer. But correct according to whom? According to a minimalist? According to a professional organizer? According to your mother? The moment you ask, what should I do? You're already looking outside yourself for the answer. And suddenly decluttering isn't just about deciding what belongs in your home. Now it's starting to feel like a test that you're afraid of failing. Every item becomes another opportunity to wonder, am I getting this right? Am I making a mistake? What would someone else do? And that's very different from simply asking, is this item serving me? The other thing that I've noticed is that the word should has a way of turning a practical decision into a moral one. So instead of looking at an item and asking an objective question such as, do I still use this? We start asking ourselves questions that have nothing to do with the item and everything to do with ourselves. So should I keep this becomes, am I being wasteful? Am I being ungrateful? Am I being irresponsible? Am I failing at this? Do you see what just happened? We took a decision about an item and we turned it into a judgment about ourselves. So we're no longer deciding what to do with the object. Now we are evaluating ourselves. The object is no longer on trial. We are. And once that happens, shame has a way of following close behind. So here's an example of what that has looked like for me. I remember buying fabric years ago because I was going to make a quilt for my daughter, and I had every intention of making it. But life got busy, I got sick, and I never made the quilt. And every time I came across that fabric, I didn't just see fabric. I saw another reminder of something that I had not finished. I wasn't asking myself, do I still plan to make this quilt? Instead, I was thinking, I should have done that by now. And looking back, I don't think I was struggling because I owned fabric. I was struggling because every time I saw it, I was judging myself instead of simply deciding what to do with it. Eventually, I gave the fabric to a woman who makes quilts. She was excited to have it, and I felt good knowing that it was going to someone who would use it. And I realized something. Letting go of the fabric wasn't the hardest part. Letting go of the guilt was. And once I let go of the guilt, the decision about the fabric became surprisingly easy. Now, maybe you've heard some of these thoughts in your own head. You should have used that thing you bought. You should be farther along by now. You should have finished decluttering months ago. You should know what to do. Those thoughts don't make us feel calmer. They don't help us trust ourselves. If anything, they make us hesitate and doubt and second guess ourselves, and they make every decision feel heavier than it needs to be. And I don't think that's what decluttering is supposed to do. I think decluttering should leave us feeling lighter and freer, not just because we own less, but because we're carrying less guilt and less pressure and less self-doubt than when we started. So I think the questions we ask ourselves matter, because some questions help us move forward and others keep us stuck. The question, should I keep this, doesn't just make us second guess the item, Over time, it can teach us to second guess ourselves. And that's unfortunate because I think decluttering has the potential to do exactly the opposite. I think it can help us gain confidence in our own judgment. Now, I know that trusting ourselves is not always easy. Life has a way of shaking your confidence. Maybe you've been through a divorce or you've lost someone you love and the world just doesn't seem as certain as it once did. Maybe you've had to start over, or maybe you've spent so long listening to someone else's opinions until somewhere along the way you stopped trusting your own. If trusting yourself feels difficult right now, I hope you'll give yourself some grace. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. It means you're human and you've lived through some hard things. And those experiences don't just stay tucked away in one part of our lives. They influence the way we approach all sorts of decisions, including the ones we make in our homes. Because it's rarely just about that coffee mug or that sweater or that box in the garage that we're trying to declutter. Every item becomes another opportunity to wonder, can I trust myself to make this decision? Decluttering can be about so much more than getting rid of stuff. It gives us hundreds of small opportunities to practice something so much more important: listening to ourselves, paying attention to what's true today instead of what we thought should be true. Making one honest decision and then another until little by little something begins to change. You realize you're capable. You realize your judgment is wiser than you've been giving yourself credit for. You realize you don't have to make every decision perfectly. You just have to make the best decision you can with the information you have today. And I think that's one of the greatest gifts that decluttering has to offer. Not just a home with less clutter, but a version of you that can trust yourself more than you did when you started. If you've gotten any value out of this video so far, it would mean the world to me if you would hit that subscribe button so that I can reach more people and help more people. Thank you so much. Let's keep going. So if should I keep this isn't a very helpful question, what do we ask instead? I don't think there's one perfect replacement. I think there are lots of questions that make room for thoughtful decisions without inviting all that guilt and fear and second guessing that we've been talking about. For me, some of those questions sound like this. Do I use it? Do I love it? Would I replace it if it disappeared? Does it still fit the life that I'm living today? Notice how all of these questions bring the focus back to where it belongs. They don't ask someone else to decide for me. They don't ask what a professional organizer would do, or what my neighbor would do, or what someone on the internet thinks I should do. They bring the decision back to the person who actually has to live with it, me. I could pick up an item and show it to a dozen people and ask them, should I keep this? And I'd probably get 12 different answers. But I don't need 12 different people to answer this question. Do I love it? Because only I know the answer to that. Only I know whether I use it and whether I love it and whether it still fits the life that I live today. Nobody else gets a vote. And I think that's a much healthier place to be when we're making decisions. Because every time we stop looking for permission outside ourselves and start listening to ourselves, we're practicing something much more important than decluttering. We're strengthening our confidence because we're learning that we don't need someone else to validate every decision that we make. And over time, we begin to realize, I can do this. We build confidence and we learn to hear our own voice again. So if there's one thing I hope you take away from this video, it's this. Stop asking yourself questions that teach you to distrust yourself. Instead, ask questions that help you make thoughtful decisions and trust your own judgment. If you're feeling stuck, overwhelmed, or just aren't sure where to begin, you don't have to do this alone. I'd be honored to walk alongside you and help you move forward. I'll put a link to my one-on-one Zoom sessions in the description below. And if you'd like to keep watching, I think you'll enjoy this video right here. I'll meet you there.